Well, I believe we're live.
Hello.
Oh, wait, I forgot to hit record.
Hello. Are you going to do the music intro?
Yeah, add that in later.
Oh, you're going to add that in. Okay. Hi, everyone. Heather here.
And I am Tom, and you're sitting at the couples table.
Couples Table is a weekly live stream podcast here on YouTube where Tom and I, we are newlyweds. And what is it? Join us for better or worse.
In sickness and in health, for richer or poorer.
As long as we both shall live.
In one of those orders. And you might even be able to listen to the audio version of this. Well, if you're listening to this, definitely. But for those of you live streaming, the audio version's now available on all the podcast platforms. You just search up Couples Table. You'll see our adorable photo. And then you can you can listen to us or re-listen to us if you would like.
Yes. So at your convenience.
Yes.
Audio.
Before we get started today, I just want to quickly point out a couple people who were waiting before we started. Tusif said he can't make it, but good luck. I just wanted to acknowledge him because he's always been such a...
Tusif, what's up?
Yeah, he's got a great YouTube channel, but he's always like such a kind supporter. I just want to make sure to say thanks. And then also Aaron, who's a perennial part of the couples table. He's going to actually get some rest tonight. So good night, Aaron. We will definitely miss you. Moving on, though, to our episode tonight, we are talking about a topic that is one of, if not the most common cause of disagreements in relationships.
Yes.
People fight about it.
Yeah. If it's not, it's definitely one. And if it's, I think it might be the biggest, depending, Yeah, anyway, it's a huge stressor.
And it is money.
Money. Sorry, I'm distracted because I just checked on YouTube and there's a bunch of comments that aren't showing up on StreamYard. So I was like,
well, Simply Obs just popped up and said, "Oh, the money talk." Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna refresh this, but I think you're okay.
That's what we're
having technical difficulties
diving into right now, and really, we're not talking about it because we've had an argument over money, but it is obviously it's something we discuss a lot. As Heather and I have gotten to, know each other over the years, something that's happened is we've had to learn to communicate about money, and we both have very different backgrounds with money, and I don't want to say different approaches to money because I think our end goal is the same, but different methods, and we kind of wanted to just share that and dig in because it's such an important thing.
Yeah, honestly, the premise is literally what Aubrey said here, the money talk, and that's it. We did not, with all the episodes on the couples table, we try not to prep because we want the conversation to be as organic as possible.
Your script doesn't say that, babe.
Wait, what? Are you joking? Gosh. Oh my gosh. So District Capital Management is here. Looking forward to this, which is awesome because District Capital Management is Alvin, who is a financial advisor.
Well, perfect. The perfect person to be here right now.
Aaron, come on, Aaron. Community needs you. Nice XLR cables.
Yes, we're on brand. I got the blue and Heather's got the purple XLR mic
Rob
cable.
smashed the thumbs up. Awesome.
Right.
Okay, guys. So the money talk. How do we approach this?
Well, let's see. Let's go back to the beginning of our relationship, right? Because when you meet somebody, you don't have the talk right away. Hi, I'm Tom. Here's my bank account. You just sort of live your life, how do I say, parallel to each other.
Yes, that's a very good way to put it.
Yeah, and you're doing your thing, I'm doing my thing. If we needed to go out to eat, if we needed to do something, it's just sort of, we were always very good at being equal. Like I would pay, you would pay.
Yes.
There was no expectation on my part to pay for anything.
Yeah, but I also just want to emphasize that part because I am a firm believer in equally equal. Like everything has to be equal. I don't want the guy to have to pay because they're the guy.
We always just kind of did it as if I said, "Hey, let's go out here," or something, I would pay because it was my idea. And if back when you had your apartment in Long Beach, if we're over there and you're like, "Here's a restaurant we need to order from," you would pay there. And it just sort of works out. But the more you get into your relationship, the more, it just becomes something you need to talk about. And obviously before we got married, and this was significantly before, maybe even before we got engaged, I don't remember. We had I think it was prior to engagement.
We
had the
bared
talk.
it all.
We were just like literally kitchen table documents, web browsers open. Here
are all the accounts.
Here's where everything stands.
Yeah.
I hid away all of my secret offshore accounts, but the ones that she knows about, here's everything. And we did that not because there wasn't like, it's not like, well, here's my deep dark secret. It was just to understand where we're coming from. And through that discussion, we did learn kind of like our different approaches towards money. For example, savings accounts, because obviously like we just had different approaches, I guess. I can get to that.
Well, here's the thing. So like, I think it's important, first of all, it was important for me. I think I brought it up.
Yeah.
That Tom and I, show each other our finances. And not that I wanted to see his necessarily, but I really wanted him to see mine. Me being a business owner, he has a lot more stability in his career and in, where the income is coming from than I do. And I think that kind of showing your finances is also, it's just like kind of showing your health history. Like, it's so much a part of, who you are as a person. And it really is like, it's your goals, it's your behavior, it's, your past, where you want to be, where you're headed, all of that. And I just wanted him to know where I was coming from. So, I'm glad that Tom, I was super nervous to bring it up because I don't like talking about money, and we will get into that as to why I don't like talking about money. But luckily, like Tom was like, yeah, let's just, break it down. Here's everything. And what was cool was it was Tom's idea to do this, but like, we haven't combined finances, like as a, he has his own bank account. I have my own bank account, and we could talk about the decision behind that. But when he added it, because he's probably better at numbers than I am, but he basically created our nest egg. Here's the savings, here's the debt, here's the cash on hand. And as a couple, where do we stand? And that was cool.
Yeah.
Because it really made me, I think this was before we got engaged, because it really made me feel like we were a team. It's like you have to, I don't know, you just have to accept all of this. Like this is literally what I bring to the table. And he just was like super on board with that. And I've never, ever, 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 ever done that with anybody.
I haven't either. So it was a new experience for us both. And it was great. I mean, it was, I guess, I don't know if we're lucky or whatever, but it went really well. And it was one of those things that really kind of strengthened our relationship and our bond together because of it.
Yeah.
And so like the thing that really stood out to me concretely from that was when I talked about savings, where essentially I talked about there's a sum of money in the account. And to me, that is zero. So whatever that is, like, okay, if you have this much money in your savings account, that's like having $0. And then everything above that is where you go, because that's the whole point of the savings. And I remember you were like, you were all like taken aback. You're like, I don't even understand this concept of like, you have money, but you don't. And obviously like you made sense and you're on board, but it was coming from sort of a different place. Like, I know that in my experience, and I feel like you're the same way too, but I've had friends in the past who are not this way, where if I say I can't afford something or I don't have money for something, it really means I haven't budgeted for it.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean that there's literally $0. So if somebody says, let's go out to this fancy restaurant, I say like, sorry, I can't afford that right now. But then the next day I buy a Rodecaster Pro, that does seem like, what happened? But what it is like, well, here was a priority I was working towards.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I had money over here that I could use for going out. This was gone. There's no more money. I can't afford that. But the other thing here I can afford. And so I think that was really key, because in the past I've always had friends and stuff who were just like, I can't afford that. And it's literally because they're overdrawn. And then you're right, you can't afford that.
Yeah. And okay, so let me get into my relationship with money.
It's far more interesting than mine.
And no, it's not. I mean, I think
it's more unique, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, that's the point, right?
Yeah.
It's like no one's is better or anything, but obviously being an entrepreneur, I have a different value on money because I really work for that money, right? But even before, it's the one thing that I hate talking about. I think I've gotten better at it. I, as a person who is always trying to better themselves, as a person who's always trying to grow, I recognize that I want money to be a part of the everyday discussion. And it's not something that I'm hesitant to talk about. There's no fear of talking about it right now. I still have a fear. I'm very uncomfortable right now. Working on it, but I mean, this is I honestly came up with this episode idea because I was like, you know what, whatever, the journey, right? Okay, so this goes back to when I was 13 years old. I was in 8th grade, and this is no secret because it's on my YouTube channel, but my mom won the lottery, like the straight up,
like for real, like
yeah, like you pick the numbers and like you millions of dollars, like that happened to my mom. And when I was in 8th grade, also backstory, my parents immigrated here from the Philippines, first generation, very working class family, not poor where we couldn't afford things, but definitely like
modest.
Yes, very, very modest. Yes, thank you, that's a perfect word for it. And then the lottery happened, and I just was so young that I didn't have allowance. I didn't really have, my only understanding of money at that point was like, can I get a Power Wheel? No, you can. Maybe you can't. Like, you can get things when you get good grades. That was the currency of my family, right? So I didn't really have an understanding of money. And what happened after really showed me how powerful money was, because it just was all like the things that I remember were all bad, which sucks because I don't want to remember the bad things, but like one, we got a bomb sent to our house that actually exploded. It was insane family conflict, and I hate bringing this up. I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus or anything. My family is past this, and also I don't want to like talk about anyone else's story but mine. But it was because of what happened, I was no longer allowed to, relationships changed. Let's put it that way.
It was like all those stereotypical bad things
that happen when someone wins the lottery is totally what happened
to your family.
We got threats in the mail. We got, I remember vividly like going through the mail, because our mail used to just be like, my mom would be, she's like, look at all these bills I gotta pay. And she would, there wasn't e-pay back then. So she was literally at the table writing all of these checks. And I was just like, look at all these checks. And I would like flip them because there were so many checks. And then all of a sudden after that, the volume of mail that we got was like insane. And I remember opening the mail and it was like, I'm trying to apply for college, but this is my situation. And I really just need whatever X amount of money. Totally. I have no idea who this person is. I have a dying family member who's suffering from blah de da. And, we really need this to pay for the hospitals and blah, blah. And it was just like from total complete strangers. I don't know how they found our information, but it was just like that after that, after that. And it was just a weird thing. And then also like with people that I knew in my life, like all of a sudden my classmates' parents were like all up in my life all of a sudden, like in a way that they weren't before. And they would come over and like try to hang out with my parents. And I was like what?
So embarrassing.
Yeah. And it was, and I realized what they were doing was like, asking for money. Like that's like looking back as a 35-year-old, that's exactly what they were doing. And, I feel I feel bad because I don't even know what I would have done in that situation. Here's the one piece of advice I would give to you. I'm not a financial advisor, but from someone who knew someone who won the lottery, don't tell anybody. That's my advice. But it just was like, I felt like my worth was defined by that. Like all of a sudden people only wanted to come over because this thing happened to my mom. And it just was strange. And, you know, I'm not going to lie, like through high school and college, it did kind of feel like I had an unlimited bank account because I just would ask for money and it would appear. And like, no one taught me money management, you know, like no one taught me anything about, I just didn't, it just was like, hey mom, can I have this? And it was like, okay, here. And that was it. And you know, and because everyone knew that my parents won the lottery, I felt so much pressure to always pay for everything. Like whenever we would go out to group dinners, I felt so bad that my friends who were working part-time jobs and like, you know, were on student loans and everything, like it just felt like I had the money. So why wouldn't I pay? There was just this huge source of guilt of like, I'll get it, guys. Like, don't worry, you know? And
how old, like this is in college?
This is definitely in college. Okay. Yeah.
So we've gone, this is 10 years almost after having.
Yeah, but it's so weird because it just was so like, I don't know. It felt like so much a part of my identity. And like, I can't even tell you like if my mom knew I know she doesn't check my YouTube channel, but if she knew I was talking about this, she would just bite my head off because this is like a part of her past that if she could bury it in a chest and throw it out to sea, she totally would, because it just was such a like, I don't know, a haunted part of her past, just because every relationship she knew from that point had completely changed.
And your parents are both super down to earth, like hardworking. Your mom is still like,
mind you,
working constantly.
Yeah. Like, so without spilling all the details, I'm hesitant to share more because it involves other people, but basically there is no money left and there hasn't been for a really long time, like years. Okay. This happened in like 1998. 90s, yeah. But, and because of that, my parents have had to go back to work. My mom went back to work. My dad tried, but he was a civil engineer, and just, you know, the 13-year gap in his career was like, it was hard to come back from. So he never did. But my mom is still in the ICU, still working, like right now, which annoys me because of COVID, but that's a different podcast. And everything that I have made is money that I have made, right? Like I didn't have you know, my mom is, you know, sometimes she gives me a birthday gift, a wedding gift, you know, every now and then, but that's not, it's money that she made, and it's not this like secret nest egg or anything. Like, you know, I'll tell you right now, money is a struggle for me.
So so having gone through that, what, during the time that like there was the lottery money, what was your family's relationship with money? So like, I mean, I've seen pictures from trips and things like that. Was it a feeling of like money is no object, or in terms of just how you went about life and like worrying about bills or
I mean,
expenses?
this can go, we can go on forever, but I think there's a cultural background here. There's a generational background where you have, you know, two immigrants who came to America for the American dream, which is just money.
literally won the lottery.
Money. Yeah. And to them, it's because that, you know, if you guys knew my parents' background, like my dad weighed like 100 pounds in college because he was so hungry, you know, like there was no food. He like worked on a sugar plantation. Like, you know, money was a luxury for sure. And, you know, my parents came here because they wanted the stability, and the stability was, it was like, you know, bust your butt in college, you get a career, a doctor, because they make a lot of money, and then you're happy. Like the money equals happiness, right? And that's ingrained into my head. So when you have this like that family background and super modest way of living because, you know, they're just a working class, and then all of a sudden lottery happens. Yes, all these bad things happened. There were a lot of good things that happened. Like, I remember we got to go to the Rose Parade for free, which was like, oh, cool.
So when you get the money, then you don't have to spend.
I didn't even care to go, but it was like all these things where people were trying to, you know, be chummy with my parents, that they would just kind of throw like, oh, you should come over here and hang out with us over here and whatever. And then like, yeah, we had a cruise stint there. Like, we went on a couple cruises because whatever, that's what they wanted to do. So I don't know. I can't even explain. Like, I think they worked with a financial advisor, and obviously it did not end well because there's no money left, which I feel like with the amount that they won, we should have been set.
Had it been handled.
Yeah, had it been handled. Like, I know a lot of financial advisors now, and I still have a lot more to learn, but I'm a lot more financially savvy now. And I feel like at the time my parents just weren't, you know, and then all of a sudden there's all this money. They don't know what to do with it. All these people are trying to get it. There's all this guilt and shame. And it's just like that all leads to a very bad financial situation. So, you know, in terms of like how I feel about money now, I hate how powerful money is. Like, I just hate it. When I first started my entrepreneurial journey, it was such a thing. Like, why do I have to talk about money? I want to talk about how I want to help people. I want to talk about my mission. I want to talk about YouTube videos and how I've been able to make an impact and how I'm going to educate people and empower people. I don't want to talk about money, to the point where I thought I was going to start a nonprofit, because for me, like, that was my background. I was like, I could fundraise. I could talk about the mission. And people will just donate. I started a GoFundMe when I first started my, you know, business. And like, it's just so much easier for me to talk about the impact and just like hope the money would come in. And, you know, I'm realizing, I've realized that, you know, you need a business model, even if you are a nonprofit. So it's been a crazy journey, but either way, this is why I think the way that I do. The end.
I mean, that's
to be continued.
That's quite the background for developing a relationship with money, or like whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
With how you approach money as an adult. Cause that's also like, not just now, it's not like 35. You're like, oh no, you know, like you've been working through this the past 4 years.
Yeah.
And then prior to that, you had a career where you were earning your own money. You had a good salary that you were like, you had a good salary to deal with. And then on top of, you know, everything that came before that. So it's definitely been a journey.
It's just a weird thing. Like, I think I'm still in the camp of like, I accept money as this necessary evil that has to be there. And I wish I didn't think that, because like, even in this, you know, if you watched my vlog from yesterday, I joined this new, I don't know, group coaching / community of online course creators. And the way that they talk about their financial goals and their business goals, there's none of this friction that I have. You know,
it's
like,
really refreshing.
Yeah. It's like they talk about it like pencils and paper and pens. Like, there's no, you know, it's just whatever. And it's like, here I am like tiptoeing and like, I'm all like super ashamed. And, you know, I hate that I think that way, working on it. But
well, it's interesting what you said about, you know, your finances say a lot about you, not because your worth is tied up in the dollar sign, but the habits and the priorities and things are revealed when you look at your finances. And so it's like, I feel kind of torn, because I feel like money is the root of all evil. Like, if you just look at, find something that you don't like in the world and follow it far enough back, it's going to come essentially to somebody lining their pockets or wanting to line their pocket. Like,
Right.
It's just sort of what happens, and it sucks. And at the same time, you know, it can be utilized in a non-evil way. And I wish it's been really refreshing to like hear about like the program that you've joined, because they do talk about money just as matter of factly. Like,
yeah,
like, you know, this
like,
is whatever, this is the number of things we sell here, and this is what I need. And it's just so objective.
And like, okay, so here's how this like money situation has hindered me as a business owner. Like, it's still hard to ask people for money, which is stupid because like if you are going to buy a freaking MacBook Pro, you will pay $1,200.
Apple has no problem putting that price.
Like that's how much it costs, and it's whatever. And if you don't want to pay for it, you don't want to pay for it. And it took me forever to feel, oh my God. I was like, oh my God, should I charge $50 an hour? Yo, dude.
I'm over here like triple digits.
Yes. Like it took me so long to get to the point where like I was charging what? And I still think I could charge more.
Oh, 100%.
But like, it's just, I don't know. I was like, oh my God. Like, I don't know if I don't even know what it is. It's not a matter of like deserving it. Cause obviously I know I do good work, but it's like, I don't know. It sucks.
It's tough for everybody. And I wish that I wish, you know, what's crazy? Here's what's crazy. So talking about school, when it comes to these kind of classes that are going to help you with financial literacy and things, all public high school students get some degree of it, but it's the special needs students that get the most because they're in these life skills classes, which literally are like how to do your laundry, how to make meals, how to go to the grocery store. They take field trips to like places in the community. They learn about finances. It's really like the most useful class. And I wish everybody got to take it because there's classes in high school where they might tell you like, this is the basics of a credit card or what interest is. And it's not relevant at all, as opposed to later on in life or framing it in a way where suddenly it does become,
it's applicable.
Yeah. Where it has relevance. It's applicable. You can tie it directly to goals, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, it's better to look at it as a tool. Like, hey, I want to build this thing. I need a hammer and not a saw. Okay, cool. Just look at that with your money. I want to get here. Okay, well, I need this. And in order to do that, I need this. In order to do that, I need this. And it doesn't have to be a constant more situation. I mean, I'm sure we'd all like more money, but you can realistically hit a point where you're like, I can say as a public school teacher in my area of Southern California, I'm totally fine with our salaries. I'll take more. If you want to give more, I'll take more. I don't have a problem with how much money we make. I would much rather, when we're in times of contract negotiations, I would much rather focus on classroom size reduction. And actually, that's my main thing, rather than pay raises. If we can have both, that'd be amazing. But you can hit a point where you're like, more would be great, but maybe there's other things to focus on.
See, and this like is something my background, I don't want to say it's my family, but like the culture does not think that way. It's like the more like,
I don't think most people think that way.
Like money correlates with happiness. The more that you have, the more happy you are. And there's no point. Like you talk about Matt DiVella, who was like, I need $56,000 a year, and that's all I need. Everything else is great, but I just need 56K, and that's it, to be happy, to be, to
live the life I'm living now, where I'm comfortable and happy.
Are you kidding me? Like, there's no way. It's like, I don't want to see my parents were like, you have to make 6 figures or whatever, but it's like, there's no way I would have been able to just get away with like 56,000. There's freaking no way. Like that would be embarrassing,
Right.
Which sucks, because it's not about what you want to achieve, what you want to do with that money. Right. It's just like,
it's just the
amount
commas
that
and the
you
decimals.
have, which is so dumb. So anyway, let's check in with the comments.
Check in with those. There's a lot of them. I think a lot of people have things to respond to with your story.
Oh, my comments popped up. All right, so here we're gonna check in, guys. Dan, love you guys, and these podcasts are phenomenal. Yay! Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. We're working on that audio delay.
Annie, our views on money are sometimes influenced by family, attitude, finances when we grew up. Can you guys talk about that?
She asked that right as you were talking.
Okay, cool. Alvin says, when you showed each other finances, was there something that surprised you? That's a good question. No.
I don't think, we hadn't been hiding anything before. Yeah. We just hadn't
There wasn't this like...
it just wasn't like, here's the exact number, amounts, and everything. And like...
Yeah.
It's
we
just...
kind of described it, but then, just showing the finances.
I was like, what do you mean the lottery money's gone?
Yeah. It all matched what we had already known.
Yeah, it was.
Paul Feinberg is here.
Hey, Paul. Sup, homie?
Money is a hard battle for me. We share accounts, but we haven't found a good way to decide when I get to buy toys. My wife doesn't really care about anything other than home decor and vacations. So we could talk about a little bit of this.
I'm going to preface this discussion, though, by saying that I think this is something that each couple or each family has to decide for themselves. And there's no one right way at all.
Totally.
It's very much about evaluating your needs, priorities, values. And
everyone should agree with it and be happy with it.
Yeah.
And that's what we've done. And our way is not necessarily the way, but yeah,
it's our way, which is, I mean, we know where each other stand, but we met while we had separate accounts and things. I have like a couple checking and savings. You have a couple checking and savings, and we just basically kept them separate. The bigger thing that we did was make clear what our expenses are. So, you know, here's all the different expenses. Okay, how are these going to get covered? You know, who cares what the account number is that it's coming from? We're just going to work to cover these expenses, and then that's kind of it. And
we do not. I think because we don't. I didn't care to like fully combine or anything. I don't know if people do that.
They do. I legitimately just. I didn't want to, because I am always worried about the possibility of that just accidentally causing resentment, where, you know, if it's one account, like I'm just going to speak for myself, because I know me personally, say something happened and I don't know, I just wasn't able to work for a few months and I got zero money coming in, and you were putting all your money into this bank account. I just wouldn't feel comfortable going like, well, I'm going to go use that money now, unless it's a bare necessity. But in terms of like, well, I want to like, I have this hobby and I want to go to this, you know, entertainment thing or whatever. I just wouldn't feel comfortable with that. And I've always worried that individual purchases and financial decisions can end up, when situations go bad for richer or poor, they can end up being judged in a way where, even if it's not conscious, it leads towards one person feeling resentful of the other. And I'm much more concerned with like, let's not get stuck in the weeds here. Let's look at what the actual goal is. So, you know, one goal, for example, this last school year was the first school year my school district stopped taking money out of our paychecks for the summer. So we don't get paid in July and August. And typically what they do is they just take money out of your check, and then it's essentially goes in a savings account. You get the money back in the summertime. So you do get checks, but it's like the district budgets for you if you don't trust yourself. And that's what I had always done for like 10 years, just because I don't have to think about it. And then this year that wasn't the case. So I was like, okay, how much, you know, I get, luckily for me and my position, my paychecks are the same to the penny every month, pretty much, unless something is extra. And it's kind of easy to budget that way. So I just knew every time a paycheck comes in, this much has to go into an account that's just for the summer expenses. And it's very easy to work towards that. Beyond that, it's like, okay, if that's checked off, then, you know, it's almost like, here's all the money. It needs to go here. It needs to go here. It needs to go here. Whatever's left at the end. Like I've always wanted to just feel free to just enjoy it, because you work freaking hard for it.
Yeah. And for me, like, I do not. Tom spends a lot more money than me. Let's just put that out there.
I have expensive tastes.
And I don't care what he spends his money on. I've never cared. And I don't want to know whether he wants to buy a new light and a new lens and a new freaking sandbag for the C stand or whatever. Like, I don't care, you know. And
hey, that sandbag was only $22.
Yeah. And I don't also want to, when I buy stuff, hey Tom, like, just so you know, I'm buying this shirt or whatever it is. Like,
I mean, we'll run things by each other. So if there's something, especially if it's a larger item, I'd be like, I'm thinking of like, what do you think about if, like, I remember,
of course, yeah,
when I was getting my computer, it had been years, my old computer, like 7-8 years old, and I needed a new computer, and I ran it by you, like, do you think I should get it now? Do you think I should wait for like some kind of update? What should I do? And, you know, you helped me make the decision. We know I'm going to get a computer because I legit need one. When's a good time to do that?
Yeah.
And it wasn't, you know, you could have said whatever, and I was still free to do whatever.
Exactly.
But it was, you know, I definitely wanted to run it by you because I trust your judgment, and you might offer some insight that I didn't have. and I value your opinion on those kinds of things.
And I think that's how we approach it, is like, it's not that we're hiding anything, but when we talk about like, hey, I'm potentially buying this thing, like I'm enrolling in my group coaching thing that cost $12,000.
Yeah.
That was a decision that, like, for sure, large enough of a sum that it would impact us. And I wanted his opinion on it, on whether it was a good investment and all of that. So that's how we
researched it together and like made the decision together.
All right, really quick. Muhil is here. Gio Nation, crazy things you deal with as a lottery winner. Yeah. I'm married as an American living in China to Chinese women. Throw multiple currencies into the mix and it gets frustrating. I can't even imagine.
She's like, yeah. Oh.
James and Mark, I remember the crazy stories you shared when you first told me this during college. It makes sense to avoid this conversation altogether because you saw firsthand how people changed around you. Yeah.
That's the scariest part, because I've never experienced anything like that. You hear when people get rich, when people get famous, suddenly everyone around you starts changing.
Okay, so this is like totally random, but I just want to share this story. This was in high school. Okay. So it had already been like 4 years since the lottery. And I was doing this summer program at a college. It was my summer between junior and senior year of high school. And it was with UCLA. And it was supposed to like help you transition. It was like a pre-college experience where you stayed in the dorms and took college classes and whatever. And we went, my group that I hung out with at the time all went to a restaurant, and the restaurant had the option of like doing, I don't know, I think it was like the buffet or the set lunch or something like that. And I feel so bad saying this now, like that I said that, but I straight up asked the waitress like, oh, which one's cheaper? Because I just was so used to like, I want to make sure, it's not that I couldn't afford it, but I just wanted to make sure that like it was as economical as possible for my friends. And it was funny because someone at the table was like, gosh, Heather, you're so cheap. And I was like, okay, so not only am I weird for having all this money, but now I'm weird for trying to be conscious of helping my friends save money. And now I know, like, obviously I didn't know, I see how I came off as cheap, but it was interesting because the reason why I even brought it up in the first place was I wasn't thinking about me. I was thinking about the people at the table because I was just so used to offering to pay that I had to consider, what the possibility was, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's just been a weird.
There's a whole episode of Friends, the TV show, where there's, like the 7 main friends, and they kind of realize like half of them have high paying jobs and careers, and the other half are kind of struggling. But they're always doing the same thing. Like they're always doing the same activities.
Going out
and they finally address that in an episode where the characters, like it's like Joey and Phoebe, I forget who else. I don't watch a lot of Friends, but they're feeling resentful towards like Chandler and Monica and them because they just can't afford to keep doing the things they're doing. And so they're having these discussions on their own about like, yeah, they always want us to do this. And then the others show up and they're like, oh, we're going to go here and do this. And like, oh, see. And like, it's this whole resentment thing because the one friend group, not everybody has the same
resources.
The same resource. I remember like I learned a great trick when I was in college because one of our things that we used to do after classes a lot, like I had a lot of night classes that would end at like 9 or 10 p.m. They'd be like these 4-hour classes. And then we would go to Denny's because Denny's is open forever. And we would just hang out at Denny's and hang out as you do. And when you have class multiple days a week, even though Denny's is not an expensive place to eat, when you're in college going out to eat 4 days a week,
it adds up.
It's very expensive. And so I got my thing that I would get at Denny's, which was just because I enjoyed it and it was cheap, was just veggies and ranch. Like you get a little plate of like carrots and celery and stuff, and then some ranch to dip them in. And that's it. And I was like totally content. I wasn't, it's cheap, it's healthy, it's fine. But everybody at the table always felt so bad for me that they would give me their leftovers. And I would end up eating like the biggest meal of anyone there. And then it took me a while, but I caught on. I was like, this is a great way to eat like for free.
James says money management definitely wasn't taught in my schooling. Closest thing was playing WoW. And I 100% agree with that. Like I've learned more from video games, especially when it comes to money management, because most of the video games I play have a currency in them. And like I don't remember taking any financial literacy class or one that stuck with me.
When did you get your first job?
I was a senior in high school.
What was the job?
I was a tutor at Kumon. Like it was more of like a grader. So like middle school, high school students would go to this after school program where they would do like supplemental reading and math stuff.
I applied to be a tutor at a learning center like that in high school too.
Okay. Alvin says it was initially hard for me to charge people money too. Heather, you're not alone in this. Gio Nation, I had a paper route when I was 10. If I could collect the first week and people fell behind one payment, I would get nervous to tell them they owed me money or owed me more and would avoid them. I felt bad for them.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I used to work at a video store and collecting late fees. Every time someone would come and like I'd bring up their account, I would see a little red thing with the total. It was always like and sometimes it would be, you have a late fee of $3.60, which is really no big deal. But sometimes it would be you have a late fee of like $230 or something. And it's like, I can't rent these movies to you. I'm sorry. And they're like, why can't you rent them? It's like, clearly you're not going to return them because you don't return anything. But
and Alvin's asking, how do you divvy up household expenses? So before we go into that, I think we should talk a little bit about your money history, because it is very different from mine.
So I also won the lottery. No, I'm just kidding. I won the lottery with you, babe.
Oh.
My money experiences growing up were definitely, I would say it's actually probably more similar to like your family's before you won the lottery.
Okay. So
so very modest. Definitely like my parents worked really hard. I know that. But I also know like we didn't live in a fancy house. We didn't have fancy things. Eventually when my parents separated, like obviously that strained finances even more. And so the thing that was confusing to me as a kid, which is very interesting, is I had always viewed like the house that we lived in as nice and clean and like it was great. And then sometimes I would go to like other friends' houses that I literally thought were like mansions. I'd be like, they're clearly, we're normal and they're rich. And then what I realized is that, especially my mom was really good at just working with whatever she had, which maybe I like inherited some of that gene because it's a thing that I like to do, which means that even if you don't always have the nicest and the best, you're going to do the best you can with it. And you're really going to take care of it. And her parents, having come from the Great Depression, like the idea of taking care of your stuff and valuing what you have and treating things with respect was big, which means that things last longer. So if you went through our house, it was kind of like a hodgepodge of furniture and stuff, but nothing was like terrible, but nothing was fancy. Most stuff was like secondhand or old, but it was like clean.
Yeah.
And it's sort of this weird thing. And it wasn't until I got older that I was starting to realize like older, I'm saying like maybe middle school, high school, that I was thinking like maybe we don't have that much money because, my parents were also really good at just providing what was needed. Like you and I, neither of us have, I have expensive hobbies and stuff now, but we don't have expensive tastes. Like we need the best. Like we're more than happy with, ramen.
But it's so weird because like this is a cultural thing again, because I remember like my aunts and my mom, like someone would get a new Louis Vuitton bag and it was like, oh my gosh.
See, that is the opposite, because my side is when people get stuff like that, it's always like, oh my God, like, could you believe that somebody would do like that in
a bad way?
Yeah, like that's the most ridiculous, wasteful thing in the world. And so that was just not a thing that was valued at all. But at the same time, my mom had started I was like in, I don't know, maybe junior high at the time, maybe early high school, I started going back to school, getting a degree, getting better jobs and stuff. So she started like from the time I was entering high school to the time I graduated and went into college. Like I just saw her advancing in her career in ways that like brought in a bit more money, like nothing.
And you saw the effects of that.
I saw the effects of that, but it was nothing like extravagant or anything.
Right.
I'm not making, what is it, 8 figures or whatever. But it was just like, what I saw was really hard work, like, taking care of me, driving. It was like an hour-long commute at the time to go to her work, working all day, going to school at night, the hour-long commute back, and just doing that for years. And I just accepted it as the way things were. Like, oh,
This is just how it has to
yeah,
be.
I'll no one will be home now, and then people will be home later, and that's just how it is. And then what I as I got older, I realized what that was, like what was happening there. And I was, she was starting to see the payoff from that. I was starting to see it. And so it just really stuck to me that it's important. Like security was stressed, probably similar to how you're like secure. It's all about security. Like get a retirement fund, get a savings fund, get like constant income, be secure, work really hard to do that. Sometimes almost like too much in that direction, because like you do need time to breathe and time to just relax and enjoy yourself. But then by the time I was on my own, I got my first job when I was 15, and it like have just never stopped working since. And even in college, I always worked at least one job, if not two, and a couple stints I had 3 jobs on top of my classes. And so that was, how I paid the bills and things. And then fortunately, while I was working and going to school, my mom would help from time to time when I needed it, because at that point, I think I had proven that it was a worthwhile investment. So if, I don't know what a thing would be, but if my hours at work were being cut in the summertime, because where we live is very seasonal and you tend not to work as much in the summer, I'm still working, but I'm also going to like, a bunch of classes, and you don't pay to go to classes. So they would, cover the cost of tuition, or they give a little extra money or something, because they knew that it wasn't going to get thrown away. I wasn't just going to take the money and spend it on something else. Like if anybody ever gave me like, here's this money for groceries, that money, every penny of it is going to groceries. Like it's not going to anything else. And it gave me like it's this weird thing of having a very conservative viewpoint towards money, and also kind of like a scarcity mindset of,
yeah, definitely. but not in a bad way.
But it's scarce of, is this going to be enough? Like, yes,
I think in a smart way.
It's enough for now, but what if? Yeah, essentially.
Exactly.
Which is where I was like, hey, here's a savings account. It needs to have this much money in it to be zero. And you're like, I don't like what? But I think that is important. But at the same time, I do balance it out with like making sure that that I budget, I guess, for extra money so that I can enjoy things. There's, I wear, well, actually, no, with Stitch Fix over the past few years, it's gotten better. But prior to that, I mean, I would just wear like the same Target clothes for years and years and years.
Yeah.
But then buy a drum set. And so you could just see where my priorities went. And realistically, like that drum set that's sitting behind us is a fraction of the cost of that Louis Vuitton bag. It's bigger and it lasts longer and it's way more like, noticeable. But in the scale of things, I think it's just important to, if you're working really hard for something, you need to see the fruits of that, because otherwise it's like, I'm just going to keep collecting a paycheck until I hope I can use it, I guess, before I die when I'm old. And like, well, why?
Right. Yeah. And I think that's like what I've definitely, starting my entrepreneurial journey, that's when everything changed. Like even when it comes to money, because then I started to think about like, okay, I don't need to be the richest person in the whole world, because I've seen what happens when you are. Yeah. But so if I'm not, but I also don't want to starve, how do you define what's enough? Right. And I think that is when that's when I decided, like, I want to know what I think is important. I want to define what makes me happy. And I don't care, I didn't care about buying clothes as much as I had when I had my stable, super nice paycheck. But I bought a $1,500 boosted board, and it's like you said, that's where I wanted, that made me happy.
Yes.
And I don't care about brand names or anything when it comes to like fashion, or I don't care about those things. And I'm not judging people who have,
that's just your
brand name, stuff. It really what it's about is like, you should define what makes you happy. And I think like that's just not how it was when I grew up. It was like, these are the things that are supposed to make you happy, and whether you agree with it or not is besides the point, and yeah. I forgot what my point was.
No, I mean, it's just talking about the difference in perception of things. Because speaking of like having enough, I had always thought growing up, like having a house was a huge priority, just because I don't. It just got drilled into my head that was a thing that mattered. And then having moved from like having lived in apartments, and then through college stuff, just moving, just wanting stability, like wanting a place where I could go to bed in the same place every night, every day of the year was a huge deal to me. And not having to ask someone to paint a wall or hang up a shelf was like a really important thing. And so throughout all like my 20s, saving up that money and planning to have a house was a huge priority for me, not for show, but because it was a valuable thing to me. And then for me, it was always the idea of enough would be if I get a paycheck or money or whatever, and I pay my bills without having any debt, and then I put money in savings, whatever my allotted savings is, and then have money left over for I like, I don't know what the word is, but unencumbered funds that I can just do whatever I want. Disposable income. That's the one I'm looking for. Thank you. Growing up, I had friends who made terrible decisions career-wise and financially. And if you call it career, not having a career is a career decision, I guess. But, just people who are just always, and I don't mean like everybody struggles, but I mean people who just never even got off the ground, where it's like literally, you live in a city that's 8 miles apart and they will not drive anywhere unless you pitch in for gas. You're like, you're driving 6 miles. Like, do you really need my gas money? Like, you're not at the point where you can cover 6 miles of gas. Like, what are you, a freaking jumbo jet are you taking? That kind of stuff, versus other people who were, maybe a little more savvy, a little smarter. And it's like, oh, hey, a new game system's coming out. Let's go get it. And you're like, what do you mean? And I remember the tinge of like going from college to career and paying like the first couple of times I had my bills paid, had my savings, and there was money left over, and panicking because I was like, what didn't I pay? And like double checking everything to be sure, like, what is overdue? I'm going to go to creditors. Like, what's going to happen? And then you just realize, no, this was the thing that I was working towards. Right. And now it's just, starting to pay off. And again, super modestly, but just the idea of, I just, that idea, I was renting a room from one of my friends when I was in college, and he's a teacher, and he's one of the reasons I wanted to be a teacher for a lot. He's an excellent teacher. But when the original Nintendo Wii came out, I think I told you this story. He had a really nice house. He seemed to have a lot of fun, great social life. The original Wii came out. He's not even a huge gamer. And I remember I came home from work one day and there was like a Best Buy bag on the living room table. I was like, what's that? And he's like, oh, it's the Nintendo. And it was like, clearly he had just gone to Best Buy and been like, hey, I want the new Wii. And the person at Best Buy was like, here you go. And clearly he said, what else do I need? And they just gave all the little accessories, game and controllers and whatever. And it was just sort of this whole kit that clearly like he wasn't even super aware of what half of it was. And he was just like, it seems really neat, and I just want to check it out and see like how cool it is. And people can come over, we can all play it and stuff. I was just like, I knew that was hundreds and hundreds of dollars just sitting there that you just spent like for fun.
Right.
And that idea, and he wasn't sweating. He wasn't like, oh, like sitting like, oh my God. Like any time up to that point in my life, I had made a purchase of more than a few $100s, I would just like panic. And most of the time I would return it or exchange it for something. Like I just couldn't, that kind of thing. And he was just like, yeah, it's just because in his world, that wasn't
a
crazy.
Big deal.
Yeah. And it really, even still, I get a little nervous, the idea of like spending a few $100s like that on something, but it's like, it's kind of small potatoes in the grand. It should be, by the time you're an adult, you should be able to do that. I don't know. Anyway, that was just like, I just liked that, the way that seemed like it eliminated stress.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was a goal, is to be in a position where the money could be used to alleviate stress.
And I think like as we move forward in our relationship, we created an LLC together, and that is a joint account because obviously it's JUMPSTART Media. So we are co-owners of that company, and that's where all my income comes in through. And Tom, all of Tom's supplemental income is coming through that as well. So, in that account, we see everything and all of that. And I don't know, it's cool.
Yeah. I mean, we're not, there's just no, I think the key is like communication, as with most things. And there's just no secrets, like, well, you'll tell me, hey, I want to do this program. It costs this much money. And I'll say, hey, look how much whatever affiliate revenue came in this month. And it's just,
I mean, like, I think for me, the biggest takeaway is that like I went through a huge like reality shift when I quit my job to try to start my own business, because like even the very act of doing that was like I was going so far against what I had taught was the path to happiness. And I discovered this other path where I was already happy, not even having reached the finish line. I mean, I was at the starting line and I was already super happy. And it was weird to me how there was all this like judgment about my decision. It was so bizarre. It was like, why am I doing something wrong if this thing makes me happy? And once I did it the first time, it was like that with everything. Like all of a sudden, because even when I had my paycheck and stability and awesome health insurance and a new car and all these things, like I think back to what I was spending my money on, and it's just like I don't even like I would not, if I had the money, like that money that I was making, I would not, it would be totally different spending habits, and I'm proud of the fact that like all the money, most of the money I make goes back into the business, because that's what I care about. Like that, this is what I want to spend my money on.
And to just sort of wrap up that, I guess, before we check comments, I think one of the biggest things I learned, or maybe that we learned, speaking in broad strokes when we like bared all of our finances to each other, was I did learn kind of like the struggle that you faced with practical financial planning. And I knew that I was better at that. It was just a skill set that I had. And so, but you were super open about like, I'm bad at that.
Exactly. And like, and I knew, okay, this was, I don't even know. Within the first 6 months of us meeting, Tom showed me his like budget sheet that's literally in Excel. It has every single expense that's like, monthly, and there's like how much he wants to put in savings, how much he needs to put towards the credit card, and he was
goal
just
progress
doing this on his own. And like
it made me feel calm to just have that like overview. It was like being in control of
and that's how it should be, guys. But it was not that way until I met Tom.
Right, and I think that is important, and like
that's how it should be.
However,
like,
though,
like,
this is what I learned. I'm trying to give you a damn compliment, lady. The thing is, what you showed me through this was I've always been like, hey, here's something I might want to do, and here's something I'm thinking about doing, but I need to be here before that can happen. And that's a very practical way to think and a practical way to be. But you helped me to be more comfortable with the idea of, no, like, what do you need right now? And it doesn't have to be that this paper is telling you it's okay. It doesn't have to be this person's telling you okay. But like, what do you need to do to dive in right now and make that happen? And it was just sort of like an opening up of a very rigid, like, no, this has to be this way before this. And that doesn't always have to be the case. I think, again, it's about balance, but that was a really important thing for me to learn, having always been kind of just rigid with and conservative.
I think that's how a lot of we have been in our relationship is that we've been on two extremes of a spectrum. He's on one side, I'm on the other. We come together and we found that balance, which is awesome.
Because I think the values align. So it doesn't matter where we're coming from.
Yeah,
our values are so in line that then we sort of like, it's like a yin yang thing, and then it comes together to go towards the value.
The end.
Let's check in with those comments.
Okay, let's see. Afstar Law Group, communicate like most topics is the key. Great job with the live chat, you two.
Thanks so much.
Gyro Nation later, guys. Nice to see you growing, Heather. We met a while back at VidCon. Yeah.
VidCon.
Matt.
Remember when people used to get together and like be at places?
I know.
Oh,
he's like biking all around the world. Or sorry, tricycle.
Check.
And Alan says, I like how you both know what you value makes you happy and are not influenced by what society dictates.
That is a very scary thing to start doing, but it's an incredibly liberating thing once you take that first step.
I think, honestly, I think this is a huge like societal shift as well. And like, you know, I don't want to go off on a whole tangent, but I think with social media, yes, it started out with here's the best side of me and here's the side that, like, you know, if you look like this, if your lifestyle looks like this, then you are worth more. But I think as more people have come online, people value authenticity, and people who just keep it real, regardless of how you look or what you have or, you know, what you own or whatever, there's just enough, if not more, value in that. And so I think we've been able to see different kinds of lifestyles. And, you know, where Matt Diavella, who's a very prominent content creator, minimalist thought leader person, you know, can proudly say that his goal is 56,000 a month, and it's not, no one's judging him for that.
A year.
I mean, a year. Yeah, a year.
My very modest goal of 56K a month.
A year. And no one is, you know, that's cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and that's
Good
actually
for
the thing
you.
that's admired, because
Yes.
it's like, wow, how freeing. Like, and that's something I've
Yes.
heard people talk about after being like in quarantine and whatnot is, you know, people's job situations have changed, people's financial situations have changed. And there's a group of people who are like seriously reevaluating kind of everything. Do we want to go back to work when this is over? Like, do I need to go back to my 60-hour-a-week office job? Like, it seems like maybe I could get by on a part-time thing, or maybe I could try this other thing that I've been wanting to do. And maybe we don't need to just be doing everything that we were doing before, because we're spending less, doing less, and we're happier. Not everybody's obviously in that case, but
right.
But
Yeah.
it's just the idea of what you, going back to the very beginning, what the world or society or a culture tells you you should value and is important, versus what you as an individual value and think is important.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a mic drop sound effect.
Air horn. Let's see. Up north of 60. I've been a fan of you guys since I came across your channel a few weeks ago. Thanks to Tom's review, I purchased the Rodecaster Pro.
There we go. You're welcome, Rode.
I know. So how do we tie this?
I mean, I don't know that it's an ongoing thing. I think that it's just important to acknowledge the fact that we have an open dialogue about finances. It doesn't have to be a big scary thing. And it also, it's not a one size fits all. And the important thing is to keep that dialogue open. And maybe by us having the dialogue publicly, other people will think about it or open up dialogues of their own, or just keep the conversation going.
Yeah. I would say before we had the conversation, unknowingly to both of us, that the money was a point of tension, not consciously, but for me, because I was so scared about talking about it, you know, there just was so much shame for me to bring it to the table. So, you know, once we talked everything out and everything's out in the open, it's been like, there's nothing to hide or anything. So it's cool.
Yeah. Communication just makes things.
Yeah. And
easier.
we are very, we very much acknowledge each other's goals and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Let's wrap it up with Alan's comment here.
Alan, goals are achieved when you have a plan, but that doesn't mean plans can't change and pivot, especially through this pandemic. We found how important it is to be able to adapt.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Alan is also a financial advisor.
Then even more weight to that advice.
Alan says, I really enjoyed your episode. Onward to our journey. Yes. Awesome.
Yes.
So if you guys have if you want to learn more about money, I highly recommend these two channels of the ones that I just highlighted. Here's Alan, okay? And here's Alvin of District Capital Management. If you want to learn from the pros, these guys are both financial advisors, and I highly recommend that you go check out their channels. They have content about all things financial advice. And, you know, if you have any questions, I'm sure that they're a lot more qualified to answer money questions than we are. But
yes.
Yeah, we're happy to share kind of just like how we do things with you guys.
But thanks for hanging out with us at the couples table. We're going to it's time to clear the table.
Oh, I like that. That's a great ending.
just thought of it.
And if you have any questions or suggestions for what we can talk about next, let us know. Thanks for being here. Thanks for hanging out.
Yep. And we will see you next time.
Next Thursday, 6 p.m. Bye.